Hello, everybody. Welcome to my stream. I haven't been on for a while. Today will be the first day that I've been on for a while. I actually left a message in my community post that I've been moving to a new residence. One thing that I would ask is to, I changed to a new place, and I think I'm trying to sound treat the room, but tell me if you hear too much echo or whatever, but excuse me if there is echo. I think I've kind of got it under control, but I'm in my new studio now. Actually, before we start, I'm going to cover a couple of things. Alejandra asked in Spanish, but I'll translate it for you all that don't understand Spanish. She said, hola, necesita un RFC para abrir una cuenta banco en Mexico. Gracias. Actually, Alejandra, the answer to that, basically what she's asking is, do I need an RFC number to open a bank account in Mexico? The answer to that question is yes, and I do think no, because let me explain to you what an RFC is first, for those of you who are new to wanting to move to Mexico. An RFC is basically a tax ID number that's given out by the SAT, which is the equivalent to the IRS. And it's used for paying taxes. It's also used for conducting any kind of business. For example, purchasing large items, purchasing a house, a lot of different things, financial transactions. In the past, you didn't need an RFC. I opened my BBVA account without an RFC. All you needed was a passport. Now, here's the catch with the RFC. About 2 years ago, actually it's been 2 years, Mexican Congress basically mandated that everyone, including residents, get an RFC. Anybody over the age of 18. Regardless of whether you pay taxes or don't pay taxes, it became a law that they passed. Now, there was a deadline for this to be completed, but the problem was as SAT got overwhelmed with people applying for RFCs, and people were taking up to 6 months to get their RFC. The other problem was that with residents that were like temporary residents and permanent residents, what happened is those residents, permanent residents, were getting their RFC fine, which I got my RFC, and temporary residents were being told that, oh, you can't get an RFC unless you're working and you need a work permit. And then they would go to immigration and say, I need a work permit. And immigration would say, you can't get a work permit without an RFC. Now, I don't know. There's a lot of this stuff that had been going on. Also, since SAT was unable to complete this requirement of everybody getting an RFC, they keep on extending the deadline, extending the deadline, extending the deadline, extending the deadline. So really, right now, this requirement by law to have an RFC isn't fully enforced, but most businesses have gone to a new, basically here in Mexico, whenever you conduct a large business transaction, they issue what you call a factura. And a factura basically is like when you buy a car, they'll give you a factura. It's kind of a receipt, and then that reports to the tax people that you bought a car. And that's how the tax authority here keeps track of financial transactions for the business. Now the business has reported automatically that they sold a car to you and that you purchased this vehicle if you've used it for a tax break or whatever. But what has happened is factura system, they started this 2.0 system where it requires an RFC. Now, there used to be a generic RFC number. I still think it's active, and people are still using it, but a lot of people are shying away from this generic RFC. They have gone to the Factura 2.0 system. So most businesses, for the sake of convenience, has said, unless you have a Factura, we won't do business with you. I mean, not Factura, RFC. So what basically they're doing now is most banks, almost every single bank, Intercam was one of the banks that you could open up. Actually, you didn't even need residency with Intercam. But I have heard mixed things about opening up a bank account. And the thing is that Pretty much every bank is requiring an RFC now. When we purchased our property, they required an RFC, no more temporary RFC. So you're pretty much going to have a bank account, an RFC to get a bank account. There are some banks that are still making exceptions, but I'll give you an example with my bank account. I didn't need an RFC when I opened it, but they offered me a credit card, which is very convenient sometimes to use, but I pay the balance off. You don't want to get a credit card. We're going to talk about credit cards and debit cards, and that's one of the things I'm going to get into. But we got a credit card so that we could use it for expenses. You get points, and we pay it off every month because the interest rates are outrageous. And also you can do payments like over 12 months or whatever for different items. So when I got the credit card, they wouldn't give me the credit card, or they wouldn't do any further banking with me or any transactions or large transactions. For example, if I wanted to transfer money, I had to update my, they call it your situación fiscal. I had to update that with my RFC. So the banks are little by little requiring that. And Alejandro, you said you had a cita here in Monterrey, the 19th of July for your residency. If they ask you, I don't know if Monterrey is doing that, but some INM offices are asking you if they actually issue a CORP, which is a little bit different. It's a national ID number. See, in the United States, you have a social security number that's everything. Your national ID number, it's your tax ID number. They're going to issue you a CORP, but from what I understand, some immigration offices are offering basically to get your RFC for you while you do your residency process. If that's an option in Monterrey when you have your residency appointment, do that, because it's very hard. You have to wait in line. You have to make an appointment. The only bank that I know of that was still accepting bank accounts now, I don't think they're accepting bank accounts just on a passport, but they're still doing the RFC, was Intercam. So you might want to check with Intercam, but most banks now are requiring that RFC, unfortunately. And the problem with getting RFC is it takes you a little bit of time. You have to make an appointment at the SAT and everything else. I'll probably do a video on how to do that. Angie, Ola from DFW. How are you doing, Angie? I'm going to get to your, someone actually asked another question. I got your email about WISE. I'm going to address that tonight. Another thing that I want to do before sometimes I do some housekeeping before I start my live stream. I want to bring to your attention two things that came up in my Facebook, one thing that came up in my Facebook group, and another thing that came up in one of my videos, on one of my live streams, actually. The first thing that came up just recently when we were talking about the devaluation of the peso, someone made a comment, and it's also been made in my Facebook group, about Mexico joining BRICS. For anybody who doesn't know what BRICS is a trade alliance between Russia, Brazil, India, and China. And there have been some YouTube videos that Mexico just joined BRICS. And the comment, if you want to go to that live stream, was, well, now you get to see what it's like to be on the other side of the financial system, and BRICS is going to dominate. Viva Mexico, cabrones. And basically implying that Mexico has joined BRICS and now they're going to overtake the United States. I'm not defending the United States. I don't get into politics, but I want to clear something up, because certain people have gotten kind of paranoid that somehow Mexico is going to become some communist nation because most of these countries are controlled by either a dictator or a communist country. That is not true. Mexico has not joined BRICS. Mexico probably won't join BRICS. The reason why Mexico has been in the news about BRICS is because they've attended the BRICS conference. They have an economic summit, just like the G5 or the G7. I forgot what that economic summit is. It's the different nations that belong to that. Well, BRICS is trying to create their own economic system or whatever. And Mexico has attended. Certain Mexican politicians have shown interest in joining BRICS. but nothing has ever been signed. What people need to understand is in order for Mexico to ever join BRICS, it has to be approved by Congress and everything else. And the sentiment in Congress is not that it will never happen. What people need to understand, and I'm not defending the United States or Canada here, for those of you who might not like the United States or Canada, but what people need to understand is that Mexico's #1 trading partners is Canada and the United States through NAFTA. And actually, that is why the peso is doing so good against the dollar. If it wasn't for the trade that they're doing with the United States and Canada, if Mexico were to join BRICS, it would be economic suicide. That's the truth. So for those of you who are concerned, because I do know I got a very concerned post that somehow Mexico joined BRICS and that they're going to look, they do have relationships, economic relationships with all of those countries, but they're not going to join BRICS. So that's one thing I want to get clear. Another thing I want to do is I did get one of my things held for review, and I decided not to put that comment up because I got a comment on one of my on my last video about living on $1,500 a month. Someone placed a link to a YouTube video from another YouTuber who I'm not going to promote the YouTube video, so that's why I didn't approve it. But it was a video on how you can live in Mexico without having to have obtained residency. That video that's circulating is basically telling people that they can run to the border as many times they want and get 180 days. And one of the things that I need to stress with everybody, and I stress this in my video, 180 days is not guaranteed. No matter where you enter, 180 days is not guaranteed. So even though that might present a possible solution to the problem, that does not mean that you can get 180 days every time you come in. It is up to the discretion of the Mexican immigration officer. That's what I actually told people when I said that you need to take into consideration different things of coming here on $1,500 a month. Somehow people want to prove me wrong and say that, oh, well, you know what? You don't need to worry about residency because you can do this. And here's a YouTube video that tells you how to do it. I'm sorry, but I never said that you couldn't do it. You can do it, but I always said, have a plan. Those are the things that you need to look into. One thing you need to understand about my YouTube channel, and I'm gonna stop here with it, is I don't make any money off of this. I'm here to educate people. I'm not here to scare you away from moving to Mexico. I'm here to tell you to be prepared. If I come and I do a video saying it's going to be hard to live here for $1,500 a month, it's not because I don't want you to come here and say it's not doable or you can't do that. I got a lot of feedback saying, oh, well, you know, what do you want us to do? Yes, I can do it. I do this. No, but what I was trying to tell you is that you can't expect a certain type of lifestyle if you come here on $1,500 a month. You have to set realistic expectations. If you're going to run to the border every 180 days, then do your research. Get into Facebook groups with people that do this. Make sure you know which borders are the most lax, which places are the most lax to do this, because the problem that you have is when you have these YouTubers giving you this advice that don't worry, run to the border. You know what? They're not the one that has to pay the price when you get denied entry. And I have seen it. I have seen people losing everything that they can't go back to Mexico and get their stuff because they can't get back into the country. So please take these things into consideration. I'm not trying to scare you at all. I'm just trying to tell you to always have a plan B. Do your research. Make sure that, you know, a lot of times, and what I said in my videos is that, in my last live stream about this, is a lot of times we look at videos and we watch the videos that tell us the things we want to hear, not necessarily the things that we need to hear. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to educate. I'm not here to scare anybody. So those are the two things that I wanted to make very clear. And also I got a lot of feedback, with people trying to say that, oh, I could live here on $1,500 a month. That's no problem. And yes, you can. And I made it very clear that you could. So what we're going to do today, um, and what we're going to do today is we're going to go over mastering credit cards and debit card usage in Mexico. And someone also brought up TransferWise or Wise. It used to be called TransferWise. It's now called Wise. And I'm going to go over that today. And actually, because someone else emailed me, had a question about Wise. And I think that fits in great with this credit card and debit card usage here in Mexico. The reason why I think it fits in very well is because one of the things that we're going to discuss is getting a Mexican bank account. And what are the advantages of a Mexican bank account or a Mexican debit card, how you get money to Mexico, and how you do those kinds of things. So let's first go into credit cards and debit card usage here in Mexico. Before I go into anything else about using a credit card, what I'm going to talk about is debit cards and using the debit card in an ATM. Okay, this is the first piece of advice that I'm going to give you about using debit cards in an ATM. There's a lot of people that use Charles Schwab because I think Charles Schwab doesn't charge an international transaction fees. I believe Chase, if you have a Sapphire account, does not charge. Well, I know I have a Sapphire, Visa, MasterCard. They don't charge international transaction fees. And also Schwab, along with one of my banks, actually will reimburse your ATM charges. So when it says, oh, it's going to cost 160 pesos, it'll charge you 160 pesos, but they reimburse you your ATM fees. So what a lot of people do is they keep their American bank account. They have a Schwab debit card. They go to Mexico and they come to Mexico. They don't go to Mexico. They come here because I'm here in Mexico. But they come to Mexico and they do all their transactions with their Mexican debit card. Their American debit card. They take cash out and everything else. Now, here's the catch about taking cash out. And this is one of the reasons why this spurred this using credit card thing in Mexico. I had a viewer that went to buy gas when he got here. And when he bought gas, he gave him his American debit card and they charged him in dollars. What you will get at an ATM machine a lot of times, and most of the time, is when you put your thing in, your debit card in, and you say, I want 3,000 pesos. When you get your 3,000 pesos, right before you get your 3,000 pesos or it goes off to the bank to give you your 3,000 pesos, a little thing will pop up. The first thing that pops up is, hey, you're going to have to pay this VAT tax or the fee for using a separate ATM machine. Do you accept the fee? And of course, usually all of us are used to doing that when you're using a non-bank ATM back home. But then the next question is, we are going to give you an exchange rate, and it's normally a lot lower. Right now, I think the exchange rate is 16.7 or 16.8. It'll say, we're going to give you an exchange rate of 15 point something pesos or something way below the exchange rate. Do you accept this? And it's kind of a trick because they kind of make you say, oh, okay, I guess I have to accept it if I'm going to have to get money. Always say no. What that is the bank is setting the exchange rate, okay? And they are taking the profit from that 1 peso per dollar that they're telling you. If you say no, and then if you say no, then you get a little thing saying, are you sure you want to continue? Because if you continue, you're subject to the bank rates or whatever the bank wants to give you, your home bank. And if it's below 15, we're sorry. No, it's kind of, are you sure you want to do this? You say, yes, I'm sure I want to do it. And you take out your money. And the reason why you do that is because when you take out cash from an ATM machine and they offer you an exchange rate, it's for the bank to make money here. It's not to help you out. And what they will do is they will use their own exchange rate. If you say no, they will use the bank exchange rate, the official bank exchange rate. Usually it's a bank exchange rate from the morning. I know it fluctuates all day long. So let's say in the morning, you woke up in the morning and the bank exchange rate was 17-1. When you take that money out and you take that cash out and you say, no, I don't want 16-1 or no, I don't want 15-1, it will give you a 17-1 exchange rate. So never, and I mean never accept the exchange rate at an ATM machine. And that's a trick that's used by the banks to make money here. And it kind of sounds legit. Oh, okay, I guess that's I guess I got to eat the 1 peso per dollar. And so a lot of people end up pushing yes. So that's one of the mistakes to make that you can make, especially if you're withdrawing large amounts of money. So if you're using your Charles Schwab, you want to take your money out, or your Chase Sapphire account, just make sure that you never accept the exchange rate from the cashier, from the automatic teller machine. And I'm going to go further with this now, is whenever you do credit card transactions, what you want to do is make sure you find a credit card or a debit card, just like Charles Schwab or Chase Sapphire, for example, that doesn't charge international transaction fees, because a lot of these credit cards will usually have an international transaction fees. Then there are several scams that go on here, and it's a scam. Maybe sometimes the scam is on the part of the business. Sometimes a scam is on the part of the credit card company or the bank. And you'll see this a lot in Cancun. When you go into a store in Cancun and you go to buy souvenirs, you'll see on the top it says current exchange rate 15-1 or 16-1. It's usually lower than the normal official exchange rate. And the reason why they put that is because when they run your credit card, and it recognizes your credit card as a foreign credit card, it can charge you, for example, if you're from the US, it can charge you in dollars. But the dollar exchange rate will be what, that 15-1 or 16-1, whatever they're exchanging. The other reason why they say 15-1 is if you go to pay in dollars, they'll accept dollars there in Cancun, but then they'll charge you at a 15-1 exchange rate. So you want to go get pesos, or you want to use your credit card and tell them, just go ahead and charge me in pesos. Now, here's the catch to this scam. What happens is a credit, and I've had this happen. This happens worldwide. It's not something just in Mexico. I think the banks try to make money off of this. I had this happen to me in Jordan. I went to Jordan for work. I gave them my government credit card to pay for my hotel bill, and they told me, you can pay in dollars. Do you want to pay in dollars, or do you want to pay in Jordanian currency? And of course, I already knew about this because I did a lot of international traveling, and I said, no, charge me in Jordanian currency. The reason why is that they will, if you say, yeah, charge me in dollars, your exchange rate is always going to be lower. I mean, what I mean by lower is you're going to get a less pesos per the dollar. So if, for example, if it's like 16.5, you will get a 15.5 or a 15 point something exchange rate. If you tell them, go ahead and put my dollar, go ahead and take my money out in dollars. Now, some banks, if you argue, hey, they gave me a bad exchange rate, blah, 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 they will refund you, but there's no guaranteed. I have heard of some people telling people that some people have made comments that they were able to get the difference back, but that's not a guarantee on the exchange rate. So here's the trick. When you go, and especially when I use U.S. credit cards, because I have U.S. credit cards, here's the trick. When you go to a restaurant, okay, when you give them your credit card, the first thing you do is never give. Now, we're very used to in the United States, I don't know about Canada, but we're very used to giving them our credit card, or whoever the person is that you take that credit card and you give it to your waiter in the United States, and they go away. They come back with the little thing with you for portfolio for you to sign. Here in Mexico, that's not the way it's done. In Mexico, they bring the terminal to your table. Do not ever let them take your credit card or say, oh, something's wrong with the credit card, I need to take it with me. No, you have them bring the terminal. Also, you also watch the transaction and make sure they charge you in pesos. A lot of restaurants, a lot of businesses, when it says US dollars, pesos, they know you're an American, they'll put dollars. I don't know if they make extra money. I don't know if it's sometimes that they can just, it's simpler because they think, oh, okay, I have to charge them in dollars. But if you pay in dollars at a terminal, okay, and not in Mexican pesos, you will get charged a lower exchange rate. And this can mean a difference on a meal. This can mean you're going to pay $15 more or $10 more for a meal, especially if you go to a really good restaurant and spend a lot of money. So you want to make sure that the transaction is always done in pesos. Never, ever, if they ever ask you, this gives me the option to do it in dollars, do it in pesos. This is what happened to the individual in my Facebook group who paid for gas. I don't know if they asked him. They apparently didn't ask him, and he wasn't aware of this, but you will get a receipt that will usually say, and sometimes this will scare you too, because it'll get a receipt and say how many pesos and how many dollars. As long as you made sure that you paid in pesos, don't worry about that. But what will happen on that receipt where it says US pesos, pesos, $1,000, 1,700 pesos, 1,700 and $100 or whatever it might be. It might say a smaller amount, but what you'll see is you'll notice that the one that was charged will be in a check. There'll be a check mark or a little mark. So if it was paid in pesos, there'll be a little mark. If it was paid in dollars, there'll be a little mark. But not all the time will it be paid in, will that little mark be there. So you want to make sure that when you have the terminal. The other thing is there's a lot of credit card skimming. Now it's a little bit more secure with the chips. Most banks require the chip and won't do credit card transaction with the skimming. But what they will do is say, oh, there's a problem with your card. I need to take your card to the back. They'll take your card to the back and skim your card. This has happened to a lot of people. Don't ever let them take your card away. This is another thing that goes on in the gas stations is make sure, number one, that when you pay, you're watching them do the transaction. And most of the time, most of the people that'll fill up your car with gas, they're pretty good about making sure, oh, look, here's what I charged you. They will actually show you the terminal. And also the other thing that they will show you is that it's set to zero. There's scams at some gas places where they will start your, I don't know, with 3,000 pesos, not 3,000, couple of hundred pesos off instead of starting the pump at zero. So you always want to make sure the pump is always set to zero. That has nothing to do with a debit card, but it goes into when you go to pay, if you pay it with your debit card, make sure to make sure that you see that they're charging you in pesos and they're not hitting that dollar button. If you do see them hit that dollar button, get a hold of your bank immediately and tell them that I did not authorize this and I want the exchange rate that was promised to me. Or not that promised to me, but that's the official exchange rate. So that's one thing you want to do. So those are the tricks to using debit and credit cards here. Always charge in pesos. Always take out your money in pesos. Never accept, well, of course, at an ATM, you're going to have to take out your money. It doesn't give out dollars or Canadian dollar. But when it does at an ATM machine, when it does ask you how much on the exchange rate, if you're willing to accept it, never accept the bank's exchange rate. Always say no, and you will get a better exchange rate. The other thing that I want to point out here at ATMs is that this is a little bit of a safety thing, is when you go to ATMs, be very aware of your surroundings. There's a lot of people that hang out, especially in tourist areas, that will hang out in the ATM lobby. And usually this is a scam that's usually done on older people. They'll wait till they'll look over your shoulder while you're trying to do your ATM transaction, trying to get your PIN number. And as you walk out, another group will rob your wallet and then they have your ATM or PIN number. Some people will get approached and have a knife put to them, or someone say they have a gun on you. So make sure that you're very aware of your surroundings when you go to take out money. What I do suggest if you go to take out money is to go to a bank that usually have, like for example, I bank with BBVA. Most of the places I go to BBVA, they have, I go during normal banking hours. I do not go after hours, and I make sure the BBVA employees are there. Usually there's a BBVA employee there where all the ATMs are, and they are standing guard to make sure that nobody's looking over your shoulder. Or if someone comes and approaches you, they go over there real quick and say, what's your problem? Can I help you? So that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you do is for security. If you can take a second person with you, a lot of times I don't take out money by myself. Usually I'll have my wife take the money out and I'll be looking the other way. That'll discourage anybody from coming up to you or trying to see how much money you took out, or trying to rob you on the way out. So those are little things that can help you safety-wise. And there's been a lot of incidents especially in the tourist areas, where this will happen. So I think that's a little bit of my tips, and really basically those are simple tips on using credit cards here in Mexico. And I'm going to go ahead and get into my question and answer session. And the first question I had was someone asked me if I was going to go over WISE, and this is kind of related. And for those of you that don't know, excuse me if I drink water all the time because of the cancer. I don't produce saliva, so I have to drink water consistently while I'm talking. One of the things that is a solution, and one of the advantages of there is advantages. What's her name? Alejandra asked the question about opening up a Mexican bank account. There are advantages of opening up a Mexican bank account. Cash is king here in Mexico. Most transactions, a lot of times they'll ask you, hey, how much is that going to be for, I don't know, to clean my room or whatever it is. They'll normally, using a debit card is pretty much, here in the United States, we're so used to paying for everything with our debit card. A lot of times, even if you go to the local 7-Eleven, or OXXO is what they call them here, sometimes they'll say our credit card machine is down. So you always carry cash. The other thing that's very convenient about having a Mexican bank account, we don't have Cash App here. We don't have PayPal. Well, PayPal does exist, but it's not like it is in the United States. Don't have Zelle. So you might have somebody do some work for you, and you might have some work done for you, and the person might say, oh, that'll be 600 pesos. You don't have the cash on you. And you say, do you take transferencias? They say, not a problem. They will give you their little debit card. You can actually do it by their bank account information, even with their debit card. You can take a picture of most of the time they'll take a picture of their debit card, they'll show it to you. You get on your banking app, you put in the debit card number, you put in their name, transfer them 600 pesos. Works just like Cash App. Goes straight to their bank account. You can receive payments too. So that's one of the great things. The other thing is with the exchange rate fluctuating, you can use apps like Wise to transfer money when the exchange rate is favorable. For example, right now it's in the 16s, and if you see it go back up to 17.5, you might want to transfer money. You're not tied to the exchange rate at the time that you take out the money. So that's one of the things that you might want to consider opening up a Mexican bank account. Now, there's many people that have been fined just using their American debit card, their U.S. debit card, and not having to open up a Mexican bank account. But we always have a Mexican bank account with a certain amount of cash in there to do transfers, just like Cash App, and also to be able to take money out real quick. Sometimes on the foreign, I've had issues sometimes where I go to try to take out money. My bank flags it as possible fraud because it's from Mexico. And then I have to wait for the text to say it was me. So if we need to just take out quick cash, we need to pay for something, the Mexican debit card always works. So, and there are prepaid debit cards that you can purchase here too. So you can do that too. That's also an option. But how do you get money from your American bank account to your Mexican bank account? And there's several ways of doing it. There's a service called Remitly. Western Union does it. Although I will tell you probably Wise. Now, Remitly and Wise are the two most sought after businesses to transfer money. The reason why is they probably give the best exchange rate. Remitly sometimes gives a better exchange rate. And Wise will give you the exchange rate of the current exchange rate plus whatever they're transferring, a percentage of the. So the exchange rate is always a little bit lower, but I mean, you basically get as close to the actual exchange rate as you can with Wise. So I'm going to address I'm going to address the first Wise question is, by the way, with Wise, you can also hold money in pesos on Wise and you can order a debit card. Yes, you can. And what another person suggested with Wise is that you can actually, remember when we were talking about the fluctuation in the peso, someone gave advice in one of the comments was to transfer the money on Wise and just keep it in Wise, and then and that way, and you can use the debit card, or you can transfer it to your Mexican bank account as you need to if you don't want to hold money, because for security reasons, sometimes you don't want to hold 100,000 pesos in your debit card, because what if someone steals the debit card? You don't want them emptying out your account. So you can hold it in Wise and then transfer 3,000, 4,000, 2,000 pesos whenever you need it or whatever. So that's you can hold that money in Wise. The other thing is, like I said, Wise does the closest thing. You're going to get the closest. They use the actual official exchange rate, plus they charge fees, which will bring you a couple like 0.3 or 0.4 below the official exchange rate. But Wise is probably the most commonly used app. Now, the question that I did get today on my email was with Wise, is there was a concern. Wise didn't used to do this. Now, as far as the other services, I've never used Remitly. Sometimes Wise will even give you a comparison with, I think PayPal also does it too. PayPal has a service called Zoom, XOOM, but they give horrendous exchange rates. And Western Union also does, but the problem with Western Union is Western Union is the most commonly used platform for remittances to Mexico, and it's also used a lot to launder money. So what happens is, if you ever transfer with Western Union, I started doing it at the beginning, and they gave a decent exchange rate before I knew about Wise. Every single time I used to transfer money, I used to have to send like 3 forms of ID, my bank account, where the money came from, all sorts of explanations, okay? And they would hold the money, and Western Union in the United States would blame the receiving bank, and I know it's not the receiving bank, it's their money laundering compliance division that does that. So what I did was I looked for an alternative, and I found Wise. Now, here's the thing with Wise. The question that I got was that, and this just happened recently because I think about a month ago I had to do a transfer, and all of a sudden it pops up and it would act. Wise is not located in the United States. I believe they're located in Europe, and they were not following the money laundering compliance laws in the United States for the longest time. I don't know how they got away with it. Maybe because they were a foreign company or whatever, but I think it caught up to them. So now what happened when I got into the app, it says, we need to know your true identity. We need to make sure it's you. So what we need for you to do is upload a picture of your driver's license. And with our facial recognition, we'll authenticate the driver's license. And then once it's authenticated, if we can't authenticate it or the picture's not well, or we can't read the printout, or my computer can't artificially intelligence figure out what the license says, then we will review it manually, and it may take up to a day or two to verify your identity. And the transfer will be sent when your identity is verified. When I did it in less than 5 minutes, your identity's been verified, and boom, I was in, and my transfer was sent. Someone had, and actually, Amir, they're located in London. Yes, that I was right. They were in Europe. Yeah, they're located in the UK. You're correct. I just knew it was in somewhere in Europe. Now, what it is that someone had the concern that I don't like giving them my personal information. I don't want to give anybody my facial recognition information. First, I wouldn't be worried about it. The reason why this is done, and I'm going to explain to you from a U.S. law standpoint, from somebody that actually did money laundering investigations in my career and actually knows about these laws and actually enforced some of these laws at the time. And I'm not defending the government on this, but I'm going to explain to you what this is all about. In the United States, any financial, and I actually talked about this in my Dollar app video and why the Dollar app could have some negative consequences. In the United States, anything or any business or entity that is conducting themselves somewhat like a bank, they don't have to be a registered bank. They don't have to be a bank. They can be a virtual bank. They can be, but if they are acting as a bank, they are under several laws that they are required for the purposes of fighting money laundering. They are required to do what is called KYC, know your customer, okay? That is why when you go into, for example, in your bank, when you go to open up a bank account in the United States, they ask you for your ID, and it can only be accepted from certain states because certain states are, if not, you have to have your passport, you have to have an official government ID, some way of identifying you. Now, here's the thing about KYC. This is a banking regulation that all companies that are doing business have to comply with. Western Union does it. Remitly probably does it. I know PayPal does it. But they have to get your personal information, your social security number, and a picture of your ID. Now, I don't know what kind of verification system Wise uses and how it got through in 5 minutes with my ID, but most of the time this information is collected and it goes nowhere. I'm going to tell you right now, it goes nowhere. It goes into a big database. Okay. And the reason why these companies do it is because, let's say I'm Mr. Federal Agent and I come over to Wise and I say, Wise, you've been helping the bad guys launder money. Okay. And I know that you've been intentionally protecting these people you've been laundering money for. The bank is required by law, okay, is required by law to report, basically know their customers. So they're required by law to be able to produce the identification of this person that's on the radar, or they have to show that they've done in their best interest, or they've done the best they can to actually know their customer and actually report money laundering. So they have to know the identification of the person. So for example, I'm Mr. Federal Agent and I want to know, hey, this person just transferred a large sum of money to whatever. Give me all the information you have on that person. If the bank cannot produce that, then they can be in trouble, a lot of trouble, as a matter of fact, criminally be in trouble. We've actually indicted banks, to be honest with you, criminally indicted banks. So this is something to take into consideration. Another thing that'll happen, Amir actually pointed this out. Be careful when transferring large sums of money. I bought a car from a friend. When I transferred 405K pesos to him, they froze my transfer. I had to provide a PIC and the title of the vehicle. And the reason why this is for the purposes of money laundering. Now, for example, in Amir's situation, what happened? The bank saw a large transfer. They had to do their due diligence to make sure it's not money laundering. And the minute Amir sent in a picture of his ID and sent in a picture of the car title and said it was for the sale of a car, then, like I said, the information goes nowhere. Now, unless you're doing something illegal and you you are actually trying to transfer money for illegal reasons, then maybe I would be concerned about leaving my ID, because they're going to know who you are in transferring the money. I'm not advocating illegal activity, but what I'm trying to say is, if you're not involved in illegal activity, pretty much when you give that information to the bank, it goes nowhere. Even when you do as a matter of fact, I've done a couple of when I was purchasing my house in Monterrey, I got called by the bank and asked, why did I transfer money from the United States to Mexico? I had to say, to purchase property. And that's all they do. Thank you very much. And then that information is put in a database, goes nowhere, and nobody looks at it unless somebody someday says, I want to know what Ernie Baca was doing, transferring a large sum of money, and they subpoenaed the bank. And even subpoenaing the banks, it's not very easy to get that information. You have to go through a grand jury. It's not that easy to get a hold of that information. But the bank has to hold that information by regulation. So if I were actually laundering money, let's say I was, and I got on the government radar, then they could say, okay, bank, furnish me all the information on Ernie Baca's transfer for this amount of money on this date. And after the government goes through grand juries and all sorts of things, and it's super secret and all of that stuff, then it's very protected. Banking information is very protected in the United States. After the government goes through all of that stuff, then they can find out what they said on the report. So I wouldn't worry too much about leaving your personal information. Let me tell you, the government has all your personal information. The bank has all your personal information. If Wise has your personal information, they're not going to do anything more. And if you're afraid of them giving it to the government, well, the government already has your information. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Also, Amir said it took 4 days for them to complete the transfer, and they held my rent as well. Yes, they will do that. Now, what I will tell you, Amir, is after you've done a couple of transfers several times, and then you've given them your excuse and why, then they'll know that you're on the up and up, and they won't bother you a lot of time. And sometimes I even had my sister-in-law, when she sold her house here in Mexico, she transferred a large amount of money to her account in the United States, and they froze it. But those are all banking regulations that are supposed to combat money laundering. And, sometimes, unfortunately, it's funny how sometimes the little guy gets stuck in the middle. The middle-class guy that's just doing a normal transaction gets stuck in the middle. But the problem is that the banks have to actually abide by these regulations. So large transfer, Mexico, we got to hold it until we find out what's going on. If you have a legitimate excuse, it's going to be a little bit inconvenient. But if you have a legitimate excuse to have transferred the money, pretty much the bank can't do anything. They can't keep the money. They're not going to steal the money. By law, they can't. They can freeze your account until they figure out where the money comes from. And if worse comes to worse and you're doing something illegal, they can keep the account frozen, report you to the authorities, and let the authorities figure it out. But these types of things do happen, and this is something that you need to understand when you do move to a foreign country. If you're remitting money here, things like that may happen. Just make sure that you know that. It's not for any reason that they think that you're doing something illegal. There's certain things in computers that just set off flags. And it's the same thing with your credit card. Talking about credit cards. I even had a situation. I live close to the border. In the morning I did a transaction in Monterrey, and in the afternoon I'm doing a transaction in McAllen. Set off a flag. How does this guy do a transaction in the United States one day? I mean, on the same day in Mexico in the same day. Boom, flag. So that's what happened. The flag gets set off. I get a text. I have to say, yes, it was me. And then we continue. But it can be an embarrassing. I've gone through the Wendy's drive-through, put my debit card up, and all of a sudden I'm flagged for fraud because I was in Mexico in the morning, and in the afternoon I'm meeting at Wendy's in the United States. And excuse me, I'll have to take out the cash or whatever and pay in something else. Or sorry, I'll have to wait, and then go in the drive-through again and answer my text that it's the banks have gotten a lot better. They usually send you a text if you have a good bank. Amir said, also, if you're afraid of the government and getting your government, it should just consider you who gave it to you. Yeah, well, that's true. So let's go back in Capital One, flying GSP. Capital One doesn't charge international fees. That's great to know. If you know of any other, I know Chase Sapphire doesn't charge international fees. And Gringos R Us made a couple comments here. Oh, Gringos R Us did say yes, but the debit card with Wise is not always accepted. That can be because that's another problem with prepaid cards. A lot of times prepaid cards are not accepted. The other thing that can happen too with prepaid cards versus a debit card is a lot of times, like when you're going to pay for a hotel or whatever, they'll usually, because you have incidental expenses, they'll usually put something extra for the approval. And prepaid cards won't work because let's say you don't have the money, or they don't know for sure if you're going to be able to pay. Like, let's say you have $100 over what they'll authorize or whatever. So usually a lot of times prepaid cards in certain businesses won't work. And Wise is kind of considered a prepaid card. That's one of the reasons why the Wise debit card might not work. But the one solution of, like I said, pile it up in Wise, and they're a very well-known company. Your money's not insured, so just keep that in mind. But it depends if you trust Wise or your Mexican bank. But one thing, Amir brought up this, and actually there's another YouTuber that swears by this, the Apple Card. You know, the one that you get from Apple to buy your iPhone on payments? The Apple Card also doesn't charge international transaction fees. There's a YouTuber by the name Mexit Planners, I believe, out of Merida. He swears by the Apple Card. He does everything with the Apple Card. He does everything with the Apple Card. He buys everything, he pays all his bills, and then he pays the Apple Card at the end of the month. Now, the Apple Card, it's at 27% interest, but according to Mexit Planners, not only do they not charge international transaction fees, but their rates are always the best, their exchange rates. I have not personally used the Apple Card. I've used it once here in Mexico. I never really checked on the rate, but the guy over at Mexit Planners, he swears by the Apple Card. He uses it for everything. And Brian Forsyth, my Citibank Costco Visa does not charge international fees. And that's one of the things that you want to check into if you're going to move here to Mexico and you're going to have a credit card, make sure they don't charge those international fees. It's usually 2 to 3%. Another thing that I'm going to make you aware of, going back, I was getting into my question and answer session and the Wise thing. But the one thing that you want to also take into consideration is one of the things that's very common here. Credit card processing companies charge a 3% fee. So a lot of businesses, especially your local businesses, especially the taco stand that takes debit cards, or the local grocery store, the market, Yeah, we'll take a credit card, but we will charge a 3% fee. Now, here's the thing. I've heard another, as a matter of fact, another YouTuber that's very big on Profeco, and they can't do that, and whatever price they tell you is the price that they have to give you. Blah 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 blah. That's the consumer laws. Well, here's the reality. I'm going to tell you the reality. The reality is the guy that's selling you tacos and that's making $2 can't afford to pay the 3% fees. So what he does is he tells you, if you want to pay with a debit card, then we charge 3%. And the 3% is not to rip you off. The 3% is what it costs him to use Square or whatever the Stripe or whatever the terminal is that they connect to their phone. They're not trying to rip you off. And yes, technically the price is the price and they're not supposed to charge you. But here's the thing. They can also say, then we don't take debit cards. So if you go and you pull out your Profeco card and say, you can't do that, you can't charge me an extra 3%, well, guess what? Then we won't charge you an extra 3%, and then you need to come up with the pesos. We just won't take your debit card. That's the bottom line. So if you, and I do this all the time, I pay the 3%. Usually it's at a local business. Usually you're only spending 100 pesos or 150 pesos. So 3% is like not even a peso. So you're not going to lose a lot of money. Now I'm not going to pay 3% now I do know there is not abuses, but there is businesses that just don't want to pay the 3%. And I go to make a large purchase. Now most brick and mortar stores will not charge you the 3%. They eat the 3% charge for the terminal fees, or they have a major contract. But there's always that one furniture store that'll say, no, well, we take cards, but we charge 3%. Now, on those transactions, I choose to say, well, I'll go down to my local bank and I'll take the money out and I'll pay you in cash. And because I'm not going to pay an extra 3% on a $1,000 transaction. I'm not going to pay 3%. But if it's on 200 pesos, 3% is like 1 or 2 pesos. And it's the reason why is that probably the local business can't afford to be paying 3% of their total sales to the credit card company just to process credit cards. And most of the time, most of their business is done in cash. So, Amir, Wise doesn't have insurance, but they also don't loan your money out, so they're immune to bank run since they aren't holding a fractional reserve. The reserve is all the money they have on deposit. Yes, Amir. Actually, that's one of the advantages of Wise, and that's why I was talking about the dollar app. First of all, the dollar app has a lot of problems. The first thing is that they're transmitting money from one country to another without a license, without a remitter's license. That's number one. Doesn't matter that they do it in cryptocurrency. They're actually transferring money from one. The other problem that they have is that supposedly your money is secured by this USDC stablecoin cryptocurrency, which I've gone into. The two companies are in financial trouble that actually back USDC. But the thing about not only are they not, and also they do not do KYC. So that's another US violation because they're acting like a bank, but they're not following the banking regulations. And acting like just because there's cryptocurrency and all of that stuff, that's not a way around the rule. The dollar app was a way of trying to make it around the rules. And the problem is the rules still apply, whether it's cryptocurrency or not. But here's the problem with the dollar app. And this is when you brought up Wise. Wise keeps your money deposited. So basically, whatever money you have deposited, that's the money. They don't loan the money out to anybody. What a lot of these cryptocurrency companies do, and even though dollar app says they don't do this, they do it. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it works. And you're not even guaranteed that you bought USDC. You're not buying it to your own crypto wallet. You're just giving the money and they're telling you, okay, on the application that you have this USDC that you can convert over to Mexican pesos and into your bank account. So there's not even a guarantee. The other guarantee is there's no guarantee that they're not lending your money out. They're not regulated by anybody. They're not regulated by the government of Mexico, and they're not regulated by the United States. Now, Wise is regulated in the UK. So when Wise says that they keep your money on deposit, they keep your money on deposit. So you're not going to have now, if Wise goes broke, yes, maybe you might lose your money, but your money is more secure. It's not insured. So you always run a risk, regardless. If it's not insured, you run a risk. But your risk with Wise is a lot less than, and also the Dollar app promises you 3% on your money for holding it. Okay. Wise also does give you interest, but they give you interest at the interest rate. Basically, what they're doing is they're basically taking their money, putting in the bank, getting the interest from the bank, whatever the rate is, 3%, and they're giving it back to you. They're not taking it and putting it into their pockets. What these other people are doing that are promise you interest is they're taking your money, using it to invest in other things, make money, and give you that interest back and 3% when they made 6% on your money. And that's the way it works in the crypto community. And don't let anybody tell you different, no matter how legitimate this sounds, or no matter who puts their name behind it, or how legitimate the person that put their name behind it is. Recently, the FTX crash. Several major financial consultants put their name behind FTX. And look what happened. The guy's under indictment for fraud. Bernie Madoff, several people thought he was a genius, and look what happened. He's serving a lifetime prison sentence. So no matter who puts their name behind these things, you always need to do your research and make sure you're putting your money away. And Nature Lover said, good info on Wise at Amir. I've used Wise, but didn't know what you just shared. Thanks. Well, and thanks, Amir. Thanks for sharing all that information. Wise is a good way of transferring your money. Also, it's a good way of securing an exchange rate. What we have seen, what I have seen lately is the exchange rate. Lately, it's gone under 16 and won't recover back to 17. But when it was first gaining traction and going down to 17, you would still go up to 18 for a day, and then it would go back down to 17.5, and then go to. The best thing to do is just keep track of that exchange rate. Put the peso, like right now, if you think it's going to go down to, and even if it goes down to, let's say you're at 16.7 now, you transfer $1,000 through Wise, or you keep it in Wise, or you throw it to your Mexican bank account now. Even if it goes down by a little bit, not a problem. Let it go down, but at least you secured that 16.8 in case it goes down to 15. The problem you have with using your debit card is if it goes down to 15 tomorrow, that's what it is, 15. So the CEO of Celsius, which I believe the company behind USDC, was just indicted criminally. Actually, Celsius is not the company. Circle is the one. Circle and I believe Coinbase are the two are behind USDC. I'm not sure Celsius, which one. I know he was criminally indicted. I don't know if he might have some stake in USDC, but the two major ones are Circle and Coinbase. Coinbase, although seems like a very legitimate crypto trading platform, in the last, I don't know how many quarters, they've been running at a deficit. They've been running with billions and billions of dollars of losses. And it's sort of like a company that is like the .com boom. It's only a matter of time before Coinbase goes under, because you can't sustain a business model where you're losing money every quarter. You can only sustain that for a certain amount of time. I don't think Coinbase has turned a profit in the last 2 years or 3 years. And Circle, Madoff, that he did die. RA made that comment that he did, but he died in prison, actually. The Circle, the company that's behind, the main company behind Circle is, the main company behind Circle just got a bailout for $400 million from a company called BlackRock Financial, who's very, very shady company that buys, that has been known for shady investments. And Of course, Circle wrote this off as, no, 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 they're investing in our money. No, it was a bailout because Circle wasn't making their. Also, the thing about the dollar app that a lot of people don't know is that the individuals or the CEOs of the dollar app, they actually worked for a company out of the UK called Revolt that is under investigation by the UK right now. And a lot of the major corporate, the people that run basically the dollar app, basically ran from the UK, came to Mexico and started up their own. And it was a platform somewhat like the dollar app. It was basically a banking platform there in the UK, and they were lying on their balance sheets. They weren't telling the truth, and the company is now on, Revolt is actually under investigation by the UK for misstating their financial positions. And all the CEOs and all the major management left Revolt as soon as the UK started investigating them. So please stay away from the dollar app. It's not a good idea. And they even reached out to me and tried to ask me to say that they had a deal I couldn't refuse. So I would say good things about them instead of telling people the truth. So don't trust it. And Amir, you're right. It's Circle. Celsius had a chain that would support. Okay, Celsius. There was a blockchain that was supporting USDC, but I would not. Anybody that'll tell you that you buy a cryptocurrency and it's stable and it's safe, it's not true. And stable coins have all gone under. It doesn't matter. So, any other questions before I go off on a rant about cryptocurrency and that type of thing? Anybody else concerned about WISE or any other questions? Okay, well, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you for joining me. Before I wrap it up, if you guys have any subject that you would like for me to cover, either in a video or in a live stream, please drop me a note. I'm going to put my email address there. It's the same email address if you want your Zoom consult. It's info@retiredlifeinmexiconoble.com. I'll put that link and I'll put that link in the description, and I'll put that link in the description of the video. And like I said, if you have any suggestions, email me. If you don't want to, my Facebook group, I just put a solicitation for ideas. And I've gotten some good ideas, actually, off that solicitation, and I'm working on some videos on that. And Evelyn, real quick, hello from Fidelity also doesn't charge ATM or international fees. P.S. I hope to be in Mexico City soon. Well, good luck, Evelyn. Hope to see you there in Mexico City. And we'll see you until the next live stream. Like I said, you guys got any ideas, email me or hit me up on Facebook. I have a post where you can post your questions. And if I think I need to do a video, I'll do a video. And if I think we need to do a live stream, we'll do a live stream. And until next time, we'll see you soon. And you'll see me a little bit more on YouTube. I've taken a little bit of a break because I'm moving, and I'm still in the transition of moving to the new house. They haven't totally finished it yet, but we're in the house. And hopefully soon, we'll be able to get a more consistent schedule for the videos. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. And thanks for all your support.